Hello and welcome to Anxiety Hacks. So I'm your host, Kate Hudson-Hall, and thank you to everybody for listening. So now, before we begin and I dive in and introduce our spectacular guest today, I just want to mention about my new book, Anxiety Hacks. So there are many different techniques and tools and tips within the book to be able to help you to be able to begin to change and break free from your anxiety. And there's also a companion course with the book, which includes specific videos of me showing you how to do each of the techniques and lots of downloadable tables and other information to help you with your anxiety, because I know how debilitating it can be.
It is, yeah.
Now, our very special guest today is Joanne Light. Joanne has a doctorate in counseling and education. She is certified in coaching and emotional intelligence training. After 30 plus years in education as a teacher, counselor, and higher education administrator, she decided to create a retirement career in coaching, working as a parent empowerment coach. Joanne works with families, helping them navigate through life's daily parenting challenges. She provides support to parents, enabling them to discover what it is they need and how to get there. Oh, Joanna, oh, it's so fabulous to speak to you.
It's so nice to be with you again, Kate. I always enjoy our chats.
Oh, so do I. Well, thank you so much for coming and for sharing this. I know it will be powerful information because you always provide such quality, helpful information.
You're very kind.
So tell us, so if somebody came to you, a parent, and they had anxiety and their children had anxiety, how would you, what would be the first things that you would begin to help them with? And
well, I don't think there are too many parents out there that don't have anxiety. I think fear is something that as soon as you have this child, this little helpless newborn, fear kind of wraps its, it entangles your heart. You're immediately fearful. I mean, you're joyful, but fear, I think, immediately arises because there's just so much in our society that creates fear. And fear is really sometimes very unfounded, but it is something that lots of us can't control. And we need to look at it and decide, am I anxious for a reason? Is there evidence for my anxiety? And that's when, how I believe parents start that catastrophizing. Well, what if this happens? And what if that happens? What if my sister was a drunk? What if my daughter becomes a drunk and never can find a job? We do this sort of almost magical, crazy thinking. And I think it's very normal, and being stressed is very normal. And parents have a lot to be stressed about. When they're little, you worry about teaching them boundaries and language and managing their tantrums, which are also pretty normal. And then when they're teens,
which can be a challenge in itself.
Exactly.
All of it can be a challenge.
All of it can be a challenge. And then when they're teens, you think, what happened to my sweet little, fourth grader who always wanted to do things with me and listen to me? And then they're teens and their brains are totally changing, which I don't think every parent is aware of. There's a lot of resources out there, but still, teens' brains are totally reconstructed. It's like they're under construction. Yeah. And it makes them difficult at times to be with. But you can connect with your teens. So, I mean, I work a lot with parents on how to create that connection. And today's world, Kate, what worries me is that as parents, we don't want our children to be stressed out. We tend to think that, why are they stressed out? We want them to be quote unquote happy. but really allowing them to experience a certain amount of stress and make mistakes and take risks is so beneficial to their growth. And
well, it's them learning to kind of begin to navigate their own lives, isn't it?
Exactly, because they are striving for independence as much as they still really need you. So it's very stressful for parents to sort of manage that transition to teenagers' lives. And then I think it's just as stressful to as they become adults, and how to manage your relationship with them. So one of the tools that I use with parents on all these areas and issues is emotional intelligence. And it's becoming sort of a jargon buzzword, but it's really a very grounding set of skills where you learn, most importantly, to manage your own emotions, because you can't manage other people's emotions or your children's emotions unless you know and understand your own. So I work with parents and say to them, it starts with you. That's really the biggest piece when they're stressed and anxious. When parents are anxious about like one little thing, oh, my son is lying to me lately all the time. I know he's not doing what he's supposed to do in school. Well, we can talk about that particular issue and maybe a couple of strategies, like, are you listening to him? Is he listening to, what's going on? Ask the teacher. But really, you have to go back further, Kate. I feel like it starts with you. What is going on that is creating his behavior? And that is harder to do than to just fix it. I think as parents, I know I always felt, oh, how can I fix this? How can I make this better? And it sometimes you can, but sometimes that's not the right thing to do. Because when you're very stressed out and anxious, there are these generational patterns, if like my mother was an anxious woman. So I grew up in a household where, yes, there was a lot of love, but we didn't really talk about emotions. And her anxiety and stress was just totally, I just grabbed onto it. It's part of me. And I've done the same, I think, with my own children. I think stress is very contagious. Anxiety, as you well know and pointed out in your book, you can just pass it back and forth. It's like a cold. It's like a virus, I think. You can just share your anxiety. So, I mean, I feel like most parents, if they're honest, are anxious at some point in the day. Now, sometimes it's over serious things, and sometimes it's just getting through the day, getting up in the morning and saying, even before you get out of bed, oh my God, I'm anxious. How am I going to manage today? I have to get the kids to do this, and I need to do that, and I have this errand, or I need to work a certain number of hours. I mean, I think you wake up and stress immediately can envelop you if you let it. So people should read your book, because there are strategies that you give them to try to manage that feeling that can be overwhelming.
Yeah, that brings on the feelings of anxiety. If you are stressed and you're worrying all the time, then it's the next step is to your anxiety will increase.
It does. And
So
you call it worry warding. I mean, it's so easy to become a worry wart. You worry about everything.
Yeah.
So you have to look at that. And
it's looking at the whole bigger picture, isn't it? Looking into, the specific, main causes of why you're stressed. And like, the smaller causes, and starting to, think about and navigate, well, how can I begin to change this? Because it's not working at the moment. Right.
And it's overwhelming. And I think what can happen to parents is first, the exhaustion is the most apparent symptom of your stress. That, you see parents who are just totally fatigued. They're not getting enough sleep. They're tired from all the worrying. It's debilitating. And then if you don't address that with perhaps tips from anxiety hacks, or from changing your diet, or adding exercise, or making sure you're getting enough sleep, I talk a lot about self-care, and we can chat about that a bit, but I think that overwhelming stress, when your stress and the resources to deal with your stress are not in balance, it leads to burnout.
Yes.
So the first stage is when you're just totally exhausted and you may be having stomach aches, migraines. And then it moves deeper and you start to feel unhappy about the parent you're becoming and the parent you used to be, or the parent you want to be. You're very, and if you're self-aware enough to see that, that produces guilt. So you become further, kind of sunken further into that burnout feeling. And I think then what happens with some parents, they just disengage, they depersonalize, they lose. It's not that they don't love their children, but they lose interest. They withdraw to a point from their kids and their spouses and their friends. And that can lead to not only burnout, but depression. So it's very important to recognize what's happening to you and be willing to talk about it. And that's when you can seek professional help. And lots of times I think people think, oh, I'm a parent, I love my children, I should love them unconditionally. I'm not a good enough parent, I'm not doing well enough. A lot of shame. And that's a stage at which reaching out and talking, be it to a friend, a therapist, or a coach, is really so important, because you need to figure strategies.
Yeah.
There are strategies to work on your burnout. First recognizing it, and then asking for help, and then looking at your life. What is good in your life? What is going well? And try to focus more on the positive. It's so easy for us to sort of swim into that negative brain and that negativity bias that makes us really discontented. And it's not happiness I feel people should seek, Kate. It's more being content and allowing what is. It's not going to be parenting is not a linear experience. It's just not. It's going to have highs and lows, and letting go of things is really so important. If you can let go of certain things, I think you can minimize or diminish your anxiety.
Yeah, and I think, letting go, that's a really good point, isn't it? Because a lot of people try and control everything everything around them, everything that their child does or children do, and that's not going to happen.
No,
that's another
that sense of
strain
control
that leads to the burnout, isn't it?
It leads to the burnout. And because I think the burnout can be very prevalent, it's important for parents to bone up on some skills, like how do you manage your child's emotions? Only if you can recognize them and manage your own and model that for your kids. That's emotional intelligence at its best. And being self-aware, and really people walk around and say, oh, self-aware, I'm aware, I'm self-aware. But most people really aren't. They're not really feeling their emotions and trying to analyze where they feel it in their bodies and how that's being manifested. And they don't take care
for what reason you have that emotion, if that emotion, or that it's coming out physically, if that physical pain, if that had a voice, what's it trying to tell you?
Exactly. And it's easier for a lot of people to just bury some of that, but emotions are just information. So they're not good, they're not bad. You don't have to deny your emotions. If you're feeling angry,
it's okay.
Analyze it, feel it.
It's okay to be, yeah.
Why am I angry? Why is my kid angry? It can lead to so many better outcomes, I think, if we can really understand our own emotions and then empathize, teach empathy to our kids, to understand where that's all coming from. I think society, we've become afraid to let our kids suffer.
Yes.
Like in the old days, it's such a silly expression, but I do think parents and the CDC, all the reports coming out about our teens and our young adults and their stress, I'm not denying the truth of it. I think they are the mental health of our younger generations is in serious trouble. But I think part of it is because we've societally made it seem like everything should be okay. They should feel okay. They shouldn't feel stress. It's like,
which isn't the case, which isn't
no,
isn't possible, because life is like a roller coaster anyway for everybody.
You worry about your child and you say, I don't know what's wrong with him, but he really is unhappy at school in a certain, or in sports, and he's just so unhappy. You can try to find out why and talk to him, but it's okay. Doesn't mean they're mentally ill if they're unhappy. You know what I mean? Like, they're going to be unhappy sometimes. Striving for that happiness is, I think, it's a misconception.
Yeah. I mean, you're not going to be happy all the time, are you?
No.
And I think, and it's important to recognize that for the majority of people, particularly in the UK, their parents weren't taught, as you were saying, how to tune into their emotions. And so they would sweep them under the carpet. And so if your parent were like that, you're more than likely to be like that also, because that's, you learn from your parents.
That's right.
And so it's starting to be aware that because you have this buildup of emotions, and they build up, and they've got to expel somehow. Exactly. And they'll come out in all sorts of negative ways.
With all the people in your life, I think, and with yourself. You start to, there's a lot of self-hatred. I don't think it's just the UK. I think it's everywhere. And yes, I think
no, but I mean, in the we are kind of renowned in the UK for not being able to tune into how we're feeling,
right?
Even though that is changing, which is great, but it's compared with the Americans, we are behind.
We're maybe a little ahead, but believe me, there are a lot of people who, I've done trainings with people on emotional intelligence, and there'll be fathers in the audience, dads, who will say, why do we have to talk so much about feelings? And the women, some women too, and some dads are great about it. I'm generalizing in a not such a clever way, but I'll never forget the father who came up to me and said, gosh, I really didn't know what I didn't know. I didn't know what I didn't know. And that's fair, because unless you really dig into it and get into it and see how your children are responding and what they can learn. And I think schools are doing a much better job, at least here, Kate, of social emotional intelligence. It is critical, because I'm constantly seeing that people are looking to hire people who have emotional intelligence because they can problem solve. They have critical thinking skills. They can work as a team. There's lots of that top-down authority is not going so well in the corporate world.
Yeah.
So
I think
they're not soft skills. That's all I want to say.
But it is getting better over here in the schools as well, teaching the children about their emotions. So what other tips could you provide? What else would you suggest?
Okay, so I would suggest that parents think about their stress and where it's coming from, and to really dig in a little bit and go back to your values. Sometimes I think you get stressed out about things that are being imposed on you. So I always encourage parents to write it down. Write down your values. Are you living by them? Are you, if you value integrity and honesty and family, are you living by that? Or are you so busy with outside things or social media or whatever it is, that you're not really paying attention? Are you making time every day to have intentional, positive experiences with your kids? 5 minutes, 10, when they're little, it doesn't take long. Are you trying to have conversations with your teen? Are you just stressed out because you're trying to do too much? Are you trying to be the best worker and the best parent and the best spouse? what can you let go of? And try to notice what's going well. I think we all get overly stressed and forget, which of course leads me to gratitude. I think if you can every day spend a few minutes thinking about what you're grateful for, I don't care if it's the milk in your cereal, the roof over your head, or whether it's a wonderful friend, there are things to be grateful. I mean, you have a roof over your head. Well, think about that and be grateful. Be grateful that you're not sick that day. I think gratitude tends to build your ability to be resilient and empathic. And those are the skills that parents need to deal with their stress and be the best parent that they want to be, or they think that kids deserve. Perfectionism, I think, is a real difficulty for parents. If you're a perfectionist, man, that only leads to anxiety. I know that firsthand. Everything had to be just right. But you have to trust. You have to trust your gut, and you have to trust your kids.
Absolutely, you've got to learn to loosen that tight grip that you have on the control, on the perfectionism, because it's not going to, when your children, as you go through life, children grow up, it's just going to drive you even further into that downward stressful spiral.
Right. And them as well.
And then
create
it's going to be a barrier that you're going to build up between the two of you.
That's right. And connection is really the best resource for happy, quote unquote, happy, contented parenting. That's your expectations are realistic as opposed to ridiculous. Some parents, and I'm sure at times I was guilty of this, your expectations, you think, oh, this wonderful child, she's so smart, she's so cute, she's so carefree, she should do ABC. But shoulds and buts, those are words that I've tried in my older years to eliminate from my vocabulary. I shouldn't say should, and I shouldn't talk to my kids and say, I understand that, but
absolutely.
That word I've tried to eliminate should and but from my vocabulary.
Yes, absolutely.
So that's a tip. And of course, take care of yourself. And
I think that's really important. I was going to bring that up. It's got to come from within you, and you've got to have that space. If you have children, you've got to have that space to have that. Even if it's 5 or 10 minutes here and there for yourself.
Yep. You go for a walk. You tell your children that, and I think they'll respect you when they're a little bit older. They'll say, that's good. I see dad and mom, they're doing this and that, and they're taking care of themselves. I should do that too. I mean, really, it's modeling your values and your behavior. Your kids are watching you. I mean, it's almost scary. You don't think they recognize, if you're chatting on the phone and gossiping about someone. Oh yeah, they get it. They hear you. I mean, they're watching you all the time, even when they're teens and they're rolling their eyes. They're kind of listening. Yeah. So you have to talk to them in a way that they say again. I'm sorry.
They're absorbing it all. Really? But yeah, because they're still even like sponges, even when they're teens, aren't they?
Oh, definitely.
Taking it all in and learning from you. They're
super learners in that teenage developing brain. They can learn anything when they're teens, So self-care, be it, it doesn't have to be costly. It's not that you just go for a massage or you go on a vacation. It's get in the car and go for a ride, talk to a friend, have tea, have a cuppa, right?
A nice cup of tea. Oh,
cup of tea.
Lovely.
Lovely.
Oh, lovely.
And get enough sleep, don't say yes to everything. You need to learn to say no.
That's a really good point.
I sometimes
and these are all just all of these build to, even if you haven't got children.
Oh, definitely.
With stress, it's like learning to say no, learning to take care of yourself, learning to nurture yourself and be kind to yourself. And, and figuring out how you can loosen those reins on the difficult, beliefs that you have with the control and the perfectionism. And because of stress is then connected to the anxiety, then if you are looking back and taking a bit of time for yourself and reducing that stress, it will also reduce your anxiety.
Right. And you have to do it in a self-aware way that it doesn't make you feel guilty. There is no shame or guilt in self-care. Self-compassion, I sometimes tell parents, look, if a friend came to you and had this problem, having a hard time with her spouse or her child or her mother-in-law, and you gave her some advice and you talked kindly to her, whether you had felt like you had time for it or not, think about what you're saying and then turn it around and say, why don't I talk to myself that way?
Yeah.
Why can't I be forgiving and understanding of my stresses and aggravations? I think self-compassion is really critical. As you mentioned, I think it makes you, I think, a more honest, straightforward person, more whole. You really need to love yourself. It's not selfish to take care of yourself. I mean, you need to have something that provides you the resources, because as I said, stress is when your stress is this much and your resources are this much, you don't have either support or help or
hardly any.
Or hardly any, exactly. Then you get burnt out. Then you get depressed. Then you have physical ailments. It sounds very simple, Kate, and I don't mean to simplify it and minimize how people are coping, but that's the way it is. So I think if you can start to, think about your negative thoughts and your about yourself can help a lot. You're doing the best you can. Most parents are doing the best they can. If they scream and yell sometimes, okay, then, we can teach them how maybe not to yell in the situation, but it takes practice. Emotional intelligence, being self-aware and learning how to be empathic, it takes practice. It's never too late to start. That's another thing I tell parents. Just because you've done it this way for the last few years doesn't mean it has to continue. So I think that's important too.
Oh, Joanne, this is fabulous. Thank you so much for joining us.
I always enjoy talking to you, Kate.
Yeah, I know, me too. So where can people connect with you?
Right. I should have sent you the links, but my website really has all the information, which is joannehlight.com. I've been doing some writing of articles lately, and I will be blogging on my website, but I also have a link tree. Yes. So I think it's HTTP. I could send that to you.
That would be great. And then we can put it in the show notes.
Yes, because it's in my website. And the other thing is,
so it's in your website, so people can find it in there anyway.
The link tree is in there with email,
all the different links,
LinkedIn, right? And I also have recently written a chapter for a parent strategy book. It's called No Problem Parenting.
Oh yeah.
Raising your kiddos with more confidence and less fear. There were about 20 of us who submitted a chapter, and it's available on Amazon, and that was so much fun. I'm really enjoying the writing and sharing, and that's a great book for people who are looking for strategies in all nutrition and grief and coping and everything.
Oh gosh. We'll put the link anyway for Amazon, so people can go and find the book.
That's right. I think I have an author page. I think it's there, so they can find me on
your website. You've got the author page.
I don't think I've done that yet, Kate, but yes.
We'll put the link below. And so people can go and find that, because it's learning, isn't it? Especially if it's got all sorts of different strategies behind helping parents cope with their children.
There's so many theories in, conscious parenting, gentle parenting, all kinds of, but it's basically comes down to making a connection, learning the best way for you to make a connection with your kids in trust.
Yeah.
Showing up.
Because yeah, absolutely, because it's, you know, it's finding how you can do it for you, because of course we're all different, aren't we? So
Right. And that's why in your book you have so many different, you know, hacksters, ways to deal with anxiety, because one method isn't going to work for everyone.
yeah, absolutely. So that's why I packed it full of lots of different ways. Then people can go and experiment and then find out what works for them.
Works for them. Exactly. And parenting, I just want parents everywhere to know that it is hard. And it's harder than you thought it was going to be, and that's okay. And if you're finding it hard, do not think you're the only one who's finding it hard.
Oh gosh, I remember it well. Having 3 boys. That was challenging for me.
Yeah, it is challenging.
Yeah.
I mean, it's wonderful. It's exhilarating, but it can be exhausting.
Very, very exhausting. So we get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, Joanne, well, thank you so much for joining me and all this super powerful, relevant information to be able to help people to, you know, with their anxiety, and if they're a parent with their anxiety, and how they can cope and navigate their way through that. So thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, Joanne. So that's all for today's episode of Anxiety Hacks. And thank you to everybody for listening. And of course to Joanne for joining me today. And before we can make sure that you subscribe to the podcast on Apple iTunes or wherever you listen, so you never miss an episode, and then let us know what you think and show some love to your favorite podcast by leaving us a review on wherever you listen. So thank you to everybody for listening, and I look forward to speaking to you in the next episode.